What is up, everybody? Welcome to Apocalypse Movies, and this is just another movie review from us. We are reviewing the new Damien Chazelle film, Babylon.
And I'm going to bed.
I am Jacob Bartley. This is Gio Ramos. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. My mind is blown by this movie. I can't wait to talk about it and just learn more because I'm sure we're gonna, share opinions, things we might have missed, and that's the fun of it. Yeah,
absolutely. So we are actually fresh out of the viewing of Babylon, and I will say it is one of the craziest movies I've seen, maybe ever, but definitely this year.
Oh yeah, there's so many layers to it, man.
Yeah,
oh my god,
and crazy in the sense that it's a very deep film on the subject matter that it's trying to tackle, but also, even if you put the movie on mute and you just watch it, it's a freaking insane looking movie. A lot of parties going on.
The visuals.
Some of the craziest stuff you ever seen in this movie, but also it's backed up by, characters and story and plot. So we'll get into a little bit about that here. But for those who don't know, this movie's set in the 1920 era films, during when they were silent films still, and they're kind of transitioning into the speaking movies, which they call talkies, and how how it affected basically the whole industry, how it affected some of the writers, even some people who played roles in working on the silent films, and then also obviously the actors.
Yes,
the actors and the actresses, main focus on that and how it kind of altered their whole careers and their lives. And that's kind of what this movie is centered on, but there's a whole bunch of stuff going on around that. Obviously, it stars Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie. I guess you could say a cameo from Tobey Maguire. That's a cameo.
A glorified cameo.
Yeah. But who is not shown much in the trailers, or who we may not notice, is Diego Calva, who plays Manny Torres in the movie. And it's arguable, you can argue he's the lead of the film.
Oh, yeah.
And people don't know his name yet, but they will after this movie. So, absolutely. Gio, I set the context. What did you think of the movie just in general?
Well, Damien Chazelle, he loves Hollywood, clearly.
Absolutely.
Right? He loves movies. We saw that with La La Land. This movie is like La La Land times 200, honestly, because it just... the era that it's set in, you talked about the silent films and, obviously the talkies and whatnot, but painting Hollywood during that time, especially for, people like us, our age, clearly we weren't around. I mean, this story is like, 100 years ago almost? I mean, just about, yeah. And so I found it very interesting to see Hollywood during that time. I mean, a lot of it, this movie confirms that a lot of the stuff you hear about has been going on for that long. The wild parties, the drugs, the interconnections with executives and businessmen, and who as opposed to like going out there and earning it through pay dirt. It's just I found the story very fascinating, very informative. Granted, some of the stuff is probably exaggerated.
Absolutely.
But the performances were great. Damien, his eye for, just what he wants to tell, the story, the visuals, the camera movement, the music, everything. It literally felt like I got in a time machine and went back 100 years ago to Hollywood during that time.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. And I would say the first hour of the movie, and it's a 3-hour movie, so buckle up if you're going to see it. The first hour of the movie is very fast paced and it's very frantic. If you know, it opens up at the party, it's going party, then it goes to a movie set. And the movie set, what was crazier, the parties or the movie set? Like, they're both absolutely insane. And yes, it was maybe exaggerated. Damien Chazelle wasn't there. I'm sure he did his research, but I do believe that like it was both inspired by as much accuracy as possible and being like this fantasy world of what he imagines Hollywood to be.
Sure.
To me, this movie, obviously, I mean, Singing in the Rain, we talked about it, is an influence of this movie. It's covering similar subject matters, but this movie's like a little bit of like a rated R, borderline rated X version of Singing in the Rain, mixed with a little bit of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I would say. Mixed in with some Project X, maybe.
It definitely gets to Project X,
and maybe a little bit of a Tarantino movie in there as well. I would say towards the end. It's a wild ride, and I will say, don't take your grandmother to see this movie unless she's into this kind of thing. Because, and I say that jokingly, anyone could like anything, but it's like, don't bring your kids to this movie. It's a very there's nudity, drugs, violence, gore, all that stuff, crazy stuff going on.
And honestly, like I commend Damien Chazelle for painting Hollywood as it was, right?
Yeah, there was no holding back.
I mean, spoilers. There's one scene where a character has to adjust his appearance in order for the movie to sell at a specific market. Very little dialogue. It's really through the actors. And again, everyone in this cast, I think he said, did a phenomenal job. Everyone's great. But it's scenes like that really remind you of what this picture is. It's not just a fun trip down memory lane. Here's the rose-colored glasses. No. Some of the stuff that they were doing that you heard about did in fact happen.
Absolutely. And while there's all this craziness going on, like you said, that's with the musician character, right? We see our main characters, and I would say, obviously, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Diego Calva, the woman Lin Jun Lee, her character had a huge part in it too, and we saw her go through a lot of stuff. And then the character of Sidney Palmer, played by, I think it's Jovan Adepo,
is the one we're talking about. Yeah,
that's the character who had to deal with that issue. And I would say those 5 characters, we really follow them on this journey, and they all went through different things, tragic stories in a way, that were affected due to both the transition of silent to talkies, but also kind of how Hollywood takes you in, embraces you, takes everything from you, chews you up, and spits you out.
Spits you right out.
And then you're nothing. But that being said, there's a scene in this movie where Brad Pitt is talking to, I think she's a reporter, journalist.
Yeah. She wrote a magazine.
He's talking about how his days as this big movie star might be done. And this might be my favorite scene in the movie. Because what they talk about is, and this movie is a love letter to films.
Absolutely.
And filmmaking and movies overall. And what they talk about is, you may not be a big star anymore, but your movies are going to live on forever.
Absolutely.
And she says something like, some kid 50 years from now is going to pop on one of your movies and he's going to connect with you.
And you'll be alive.
And that is the beautiful thing about movies. And this movie is like, it just reminded me, not that I needed reminding, but it reminded me how special movies are.
Yeah.
And it's just a big, long love letter. And overall, I think this movie's great. Yeah. Best movie of the year? No, not for me. But I wouldn't argue. If somebody loved this movie that much, I wouldn't argue with them. I think it's going to be in the conversation. I would not be surprised if this gets a Best Picture nomination. I will not be surprised if 2 or 3 of the acting performances get recognized come Oscar time.
Definitely an Oscar darling. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, we've seen Damien Chazelle get this kind of credit before, obviously.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit to what you said about the Brad Pitt character and the journalist talking. Like, I haven't seen a dialogue exchange between, an actor and a journalist since Birdman. Birdman was the last time I saw that with Michael Keaton and the critic.
In the bar, right?
Very much, yeah. It's very much in that vein there. But, it's moments like this where you see the struggles of the stars of the now. I'm talking about in the movie set in the 20s and 30s, the stars of the now slowly fading away and coming to terms with it. You know, where these characters end up, it's not very comfortable. You know,
it's very bleak.
It's very bleak, yeah. And you know, you talked about it being a love letter. We know love has its highs. Love definitely has its lows. Okay, sometimes there's tough love in there, and this movie definitely shows it with these stars that find themselves quickly fading from the spotlight.
Absolutely, man. And I will say that this movie, while it's a very complex, deep film, but it's also really fun at times.
Yeah,
very fun. The party scenes are obviously a blast, and then also the scenes of them trying to shoot scenes when they first transition to the talkies.
Yeah,
there's one scene in particular where it takes them like a bunch of takes just to shoot like a 30-second scene, and it is hilarious. I guess the audience we were with didn't have the sense of humor that we did.
Right.
But Gio and I were kind of cracking up the whole movie. But I think that was Damien Chazelle's intent. It's kind of there's comedy elements to this movie for sure.
It's taking those who are casual viewers into this world.
Yeah.
And showing you, okay, yes, the filmmakers and the critics can talk about, the magic of cinema. Well, the magic takes a lot of ingredients, a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of collaboration, and he did a great job. He did such a great job just showing all that. And you know, for us, you know, we read about the stuff, we hear directors talk about it, we watch interviews, we read the articles and whatnot. But to be taken into there, it was just like, wow, like, okay, it is a lot of work, a lot of stress. And
absolutely. And I think technology definitely has made it a little bit easier these days to make movies. But I think what Damien Chazelle was trying to tell us is all those people out there that say, why did that movie suck? I could have made a better movie. No, you couldn't. Filmmaking is very difficult. It is very minute. It's tedious. Everything has to go right, or you have to restart over again.
Right.
And I think part of that was, you guys think this is so easy? Let me show you how it's not. And there's so many other layers to this movie. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
I mean, there's definitely a lot, but I mean, just okay. So you have you mentioned his name, Diego Calva. You know,
great performance by the way,
and Margot Robbie. You know, where they start off, they're both eager and hunger and ready to get into it. Then they have a blast, and then they quickly find out what they got themselves into. Especially during a time of the transition, you know, who's to say how their careers or how their character arcs would have ended up if it wasn't in a transition?
Yeah.
Right. But, you know, timing, sometimes you don't have it, right? I mean, you can't pick and choose when, you know, you start your career. And I love that they showed them, you know, like having these little bit of successes and then they go back to their reality. You know, it touches on the thought of moving to Hollywood and, you know, becoming the big star and what you have to endure along that journey. You know, early on, these characters, they're partying, they're having a good time, they're having their 15 minutes of fame, and then they go back to their realities where they hardly have a bed to sleep in, hardly able to have any food and whatnot. And I'm just like, wow. That is some powerful stuff. So
absolutely. And there's many layers to this movie, one of which, you know, they don't actually ever really get involved, but, you know, the Manny character and the Margot Robbie character, that obviously he likes her, right? And he's chasing her the whole movie, and she's like constantly running away, doing all these other things. And it's kind of a cautionary tale, like, don't sacrifice your career, your life for somebody else when you're giving them everything
and they're dragging you down,
and they're only giving you 1% and they're just dragging you down. And there's a lot of it tied into that. And I got to ask Gio, we mentioned him. How about that Tobey Maguire cameo and those Tobey Maguire scenes? insane, absolutely insane,
uncomfortable. A little bit of Requiem for a Dream, if anybody's seen that. But Tobey Maguire, like, okay, so I mean, you've seen him in the trailers and probably seen photo stills, and there, like, he definitely played a character in this movie.
Yeah.
It's a glorified cameo. Okay, he was probably like, hey, I got some time, in between No Way Home and whatever, so let me shoot this. But yeah, it's great to see Tobey Maguire back, and be reminded of, his gravitas on screen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Using that word.
No, I mean, I think you're right because, he's basically typecast because of Spider-Man, right? And then everyone only sees him as that era Peter Parker, but he's a really good actor, and we've seen that over the years, and I would like to see him like start doing more roles because we grew up watching him. We're a big fan of him. So that was really cool. And I'm sure Damien Chazelle probably is a big fan of Tobey Maguire. Oh, so I'm sure he's like, will you please do this role for me? It's crazy. And where those scenes go with him, his character, is some of the creepiest, weirdest stuff I've ever seen in a movie. It turned into a horror movie for about 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. It really turned into a horror movie. And I was like, this movie has everything. It has, romance, love. It has comedy. It has drama. It has just big, extravagant party film, like action at some point
through the obviously what they're filming.
Yeah. Right? And it's a blast, honestly. Yeah. It's a blast, but it's also a deep film. I recommend it. I had a good time. Like, even though it was 3 hours long, like, I didn't want it to end. There's scenes, we found good scenes to hit the restroom at, during some of the party scenes. So
I will absolutely recommend it as well. There will be moments where you're sitting in the theater and you'll feel proud that you're someone who loves to dedicate their time to watching movies and enjoying the experience, a shared experience.
Absolutely. And to wrap it up, the ending scene of the movie, it's kind of like a montage of how far Hollywood has came since this era, was absolutely beautiful as a film fan. Yeah. It was absolutely beautiful, and it hit me. I'm sure it hits you. Absolutely. And again, it reminds us why we love movies and that movies are amazing. So thank you, Damien Chazelle, for Babylon, which we Googled it. I guess it means a degenerate society, if you're wondering what the title of the movie means.
What some people would call Hollywood.
Absolutely. So that'll do it for our review of Damien Chazelle's Babylon. We really enjoyed it. We highly recommend you go watch it in a movie theater. I guarantee you Damien Chazelle wants you to watch it in a movie theater. So go ahead and do that. Just like you probably should all movies if you can. Thank you, Gio, for joining me on this. Absolutely. That's Gio Ramos. I'm Jacob Bartley. We are Apocalypse Movies. Keep an eye out on our channel. We're going to be putting up more movie reviews for a lot of these big movies coming out, especially right now during Oscar season, and also some of these blockbusters coming out in 2023. Absolutely. So keep an eye out for that. Go ahead and check out also our most anticipated lists. Those videos will be dropping soon, as well as our top 10 movies of 2022. We're each going to put a list out. So keep an eye out for those. And of course, check us out every Tuesday on Apocalypse Now, every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys next time.